Tonight's class is dedicated in the memory of Yitzchak Tzvi ben Yosef. Tonight, God willing, we are going to be talking about Sarah, our mother, the matriarch of the Jewish people, Sarah Imenu. So, before I start, I want to ask you a question. When you hear Sarah, what words to your mind? Princess, okay. He says princess, mother. What? A Jewish name. Yeah. We're going to say so though. What? What kind of personality are you imagining? Giving.
Yiddish mama.
Yiddish mama. Okay, very good. What do you say, Rick?
My mother said her middle name and today's her 100th.
Well, today's her 100th birthday. Oh, okay. So she's getting nachas. Hello, Randy. Hello, everyone that's watching. If you're watching online, feel free to comment. I can see the comments on the computer. We got it working. Yeah, what do you think of Sarah? Okay, so here, Yiddish mama, giving, princess. All good answers, by the way. Next question for you. Who would you think is greater? Avraham or Sarah? Sarah. You guys are all professionals, even around the block. Were you going to say that also, or you were going to say Avraham? Sarah. Okay. So, you're all right, and we're going to get to all of this, God willing. Let's start at the beginning, okay? Let's try and figure out who is Sarah, what makes her tick, what is her personality. So let's start at the very beginning, the very first time the Torah introduces us to this lady Sarah. Now, what you may not know is that when the Torah first introduces her, she's not introduced with the name Sarah. In fact, that's not even her her birth name is not Sarah. The name of her childhood is not Sarai. What's the name of Sarah as a child? So let's look in the Torah. We're going to start with text number 1, which is from Genesis chapter 11. And we're going to do something really cool over here for those that are watching online. I'm going to share our screen. And now you're going to see the source sheet. Those that are watching at home on Facebook, you should be able to see this text over here. I'm going to zoom in a drop. So, here we have over here, verse number 29 from Genesis. Okay, this is all the very, very end of the parsha of Noah. Torah tells us, and Avram and Nachar took themselves wives. The name of Avram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nachar's wife was Milcah. Who is Milcah? Says the Torah. She is the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Yiscah, or Iscah in English. Who is Iscah? So we know that Milcah is the wife of Nahar, the daughter of Haran, who is the father of Milcah, and then another girl, her sister Yiscah. Who is Yiscah? Says Rashi, this is Sarah. Thank you. That's what Rashi tells us. Says Rashi's right there in the text number 1. I'm not making it up. Sarah, her real name is not Sarah. Her real name is Yiscah. Why was she called Yiscah? Rashi tells us 2 reasons. Number 1, because she would see through divine inspiration. The word Yiscah is from the word soka, to see. So she would see. She had prophetic vision. She had divine inspiration. Number 2, because all would gaze at her beauty. Alternative Yiscah is an expression denoting princedom of the Sichos, which is the same name as Sarah, which is an expression of shrara, of dominion, of being a master and being a minister. And today in Hebrew, you call it the minister of defense, whatever, it's called a sar, right? Shrara, to be a minister, to be a ruler. Anyway, the point over here is, what do we see from this text? That the name of Sarah, when she was first born, or her childhood name is Yiscah, the sister of Milcah, both the children of Haran. When she gets married, she changes her name to Sarai. Why? Oh, you want to know everything, huh? That's why you're here. Good. Okay, very good.
So is Sarah and Milcah?
No, so Milcah is the sister of Yiscah. Yiscah. It's confusing.
So Sarah's sister.
Sarah's sister is Milcah. But Haran, the father, the brother of Avraham, the Torah tells us that Avram's brother Haran is the father of both Milcah and the father of Yiscah. Now, we just know what?
So he married his niece.
Yes, Sarai or Yiska is the niece of Abraham. Correct. Yes. Also the sister of Lot, but that was last week's class. Okay. So here we see the name that Sarah was given is Yiska. Now we know before we get to Sarai and why she changed her name to Sarai, we first need to understand the name Yiska. Because as we already know, and as I told you the very first class, and we'll talk about this through many of our classes, the name of a person, the name of anything, is reflective of their identity, of who they are. A name is not just a random haphazard name, especially if the name is a name in the Torah, so the name has meaning, has significance for us. So before we get to Sarai, there's a whole dimension to this woman that we're going to talk about tonight, which is reflected in the name Yiska. So what does Yiska mean? As we just showed from the Rashi, there are two different meanings that both are connected to sight. Sight, to see. Yiska, as we explained, is how she was able to see prophetically. She had divine vision. And the second explanation was that others would gaze upon her. They would behold her beauty. So both are about seeing. Just one's her prophecy, and one is her beauty, that others would gaze at her. So here we come to the two fundamental qualities of this woman that we're going to talk about tonight. Number one, her prophecy. Number two, her beauty, her natural physical beauty. And they're both connected to sight. What? Yeah, we'll talk about both. But the point is that both her sight. One is how she saw the world, and one is how the world saw her. Okay. I'm glad it's beautiful. You can go home already now, huh? It's only 5 minutes in. It's already beautiful. Yes.
Maybe when they gave her the name, they didn't know.
Okay, so it says, that's a very good question. So I'll repeat the question for those watching online. Hello, all of you that are watching. So Sadell has a good question. I'm going to repeat it for those that are watching. When Sarah's parents, Haran, they didn't know that she would be a prophetess, or that she would be of unnatural, tremendous beauty. So it says in the Talmud that when parents name their children, they have a spirit of Ruach HaKodesh, of divine inspiration, resting upon them at the time that they give the name. Now, could you say that they didn't have that because they weren't Jewish? I don't know. But there's definitely a concept that parents give a name with divine inspiration, with divine intuition, to know what name to give that will be reflective of their children. I definitely feel that with at least some of my children, that the name very, very much reflects their personality and their character. And there's definitely, the point is that the Torah tells us the name of the Torah. So there's other people that have names that are not mentioned in the Torah. The Torah takes the time. Why did the Torah need to tell us the name was Yiska? The Torah didn't have, if you go back to text number 1, the verse 29, the Torah could have just very easily said that Avram married Sarai and Nachor married Milcah, the end. By the Torah continuing to say that Haran is the father of Milcah and Yiska, and this is the only time in the entire Torah that we find Sarah or Sarai referred to by the name Yiska. So the Torah didn't have to tell us that she had a name called Yiska. If the name was irrelevant, or just some random name that her parents gave her, so the Torah wouldn't take the time to add these 6 words, that really the only point of these 6 words is to allude to the fact that Sarah's original name was Yiska. So if the Torah alludes to this, and doesn't allude to it, the Torah takes the time to tell us that her original name was Yiska, obviously that name has meaning. Understand?
And also her involvement that has significance.
Her involvement to Sarai?
Yes.
Oh, I'll talk about that. I have a whole class prepared. But we got to go in order. So we just got to first start off with Yiska. I mean, that's the first name that she had as a child, and the Torah told us that this was her name, so we need to understand it. So there's 2 qualities here in Yiska. Number 1, the way she saw the world. Number 2, the way the world saw her. So let's first talk about her powers of prophecy. Okay, the way she had this unbelievable, divine, spiritual sight, that she was able to be to be a prophetess. So the Talmud tells us in Megillah, a very interesting Talmud I was learning today. The Gemara in Megillah tells us that Sarah was the first of the 7 prophetesses. Just as a FYI, because interesting information, the 7 prophetesses of Israel is, besides for Sarah, Miriam, Devorah, Hannah, Abigail, Huldah, and Esther. Okay. Sarah, Miriam, Devorah, Hannah, Abigail, Huldah, and Esther. Anyway, let's not get distracted. We can, God willing, next year we'll have time. We'll go through all these other, of Tanakh, and we can discuss them. But the point is, she is the first of the 7 Jewish prophetesses that we have recorded in the Talmud. But even more than just being a prophetess, she's actually a very, very great prophetess. In fact, so great is her powers of prophecy that she's considered a greater prophet than Avraham Avinu, than Abraham.
Wow.
Greater than Abraham. Now, how do I know that? Again, because the Torah tells us this. So you all know the story, or it could be you know the story, that after Yitzchak is born, right? We all know, eventually at 90 years old, she has a child called Yitzchak, and Yitzchak grows up together with his half-brother, Yishmael. Now, Yishmael is very jealous of his younger half-brother, who is officially going to be the heir of his father, Abraham. And so he would bully him and pick on him, and one day they're out in the field, and he shoots arrows at him as a game. And Sarah sees this, and she tells Abraham, you must banish this woman Hagar and her child Ishmael. You must kick them out of your home. Now, Abraham did not want to do that. Abraham, first of all, loves his child. But not only did he love his child, first of all, I should say the other way around. Abraham, first of all, loved every single person. Abraham was a man of tremendous kindness. He was a man of chesed. Avram loved every single human being. Avram welcomed every random stranger into his home. Every idol worshiper was welcome in his home. His own son wouldn't be welcome in his home? Of course he'll be welcome in his home. And so Avram's initial reaction is not to do what his wife says to him. I guess the first Jewish husband. Right? So he's not planning on doing what his wife said. Not in the plans. So I saw a cute thing on Facebook, a meme, that when you ask your husband to do something, he will do it. You don't need to remind him every 6 months, So Avram wasn't planning on doing it. It was, as the Torah tells, it was evil in his eyes to send away his son. What happens? God comes to Avraham, and he says to Avraham, we're going to read this following text inside, text number 2, which is from chapter 21 of Genesis, verse number 12. God says to Avraham, Al Yeira beinecha, be not displeased concerning the lad and concerning your handmaid. Kol asher toimar elecha Sara, shema b'kola, which means whatever Sarah tells you, hearken to her voice, listen to her. She's right, because Yitzchak will be called your seed. Yitzchak is your future. Says Rashi, what does it mean? Shema b'kola, listen to her voice. From here we learn that there was a voice of a Holy Spirit within her. And therefore, we learn from here that Avram was inferior to Sarah in prophecy. Avram was a prophet. Avram spoke to God. And yet Avram was not able to understand that Yishmael had to be kicked out of his home. God says to him, Sarah, don't just obey her. Shema b'kola, listen in her voice, because b'kola means in her voice. Within her voice is the voice of prophecy, is the voice of the Holy Spirit within her. She is a greater prophet than you are.
So, Rabbi, how do we continue now to do the same things? The men listen to their wife, but the man doesn't throw his kids out to the street.
I'm not saying you should throw your kids on the street. The point here is not about kicking out Yishmael. The point here is about Sarah having greater prophecy than Avram, and that's the only point we need to talk about right now. The story of Yishmael is another story. I don't remember if it's on my list to go through in 1 week or not. I don't remember. The point is, hello from Pennsylvania. Hello from Pennsylvania from Matt. Okay. The point is, and Faith says hello to everyone in the class. The point is that Sarah has not only prophecy, she has greater powers of prophecy than her famous husband, Avram. That's pretty cool, right? Now let's talk about her beauty.
And who says that?
Rashi.
Who says that women are not important?
Whoever thinks that Judaism diminishes women, I'm sorry to say it, but it's the truth. They're uneducated. Anyone that says that Judaism looks down at women is not educated in Torah. Okay. Anyway, maybe I shouldn't say that on Facebook, but it's fine. It's already out there. One day they'll cancel me. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. But okay. But that's the truth. So let's talk about Sarah's beauty now. So we know, besides for Sarah being one of the 7 prophetesses, the Talmud also tells us in a different tractate that she was one of the 4 most beautiful women to ever live. Talked about this on Shabbos. Yes. Esther, as you remember her, Esther, Abigail, and Rachav, the spy that saved Joshua, that she married Joshua. One of the 4 most beautiful women to live is Sarah. She is so beautiful that not once but twice the kings of the land where she goes are so struck by her beauty, say, this is the most beautiful woman, we want her. So she's a woman that kings want. You know what I'm saying? So when you rank the beauty of a woman, however they rank women, she's on king level. I don't know, 9, 10, I'm saying. They models, I'm sure, there must be like different rankings, like, VIP, and then like VIP, and then there's like, the Putin level, whatever, like, that level, you know what I'm saying? So she was a high level when it comes to physical beauty. She was very, very beautiful. Even the kings wanted her. And yet, here we come to the fact that Sarah changes her name from Yiska to Sarai. And by the way, her changing her name was her own, she changed her name. She got married, she changed her name. What does Sarai mean? We're going to see when we see the text, but Sarai means a princess over me. A Sar is a princess. We already quoted that in the Rashi of text number 1. Sara is an expression of dominion, of rulership, of being a master. Sarai means I am my own master. So Sarai is changing her identity. She was an unbelievably gorgeous, hot, beautiful woman with prophetic vision. She could have been famous. Yiska, she's beautiful. And instead, she chooses to literally become my princess. She changes from being the most seen, most visible, most out there woman that was there. And she says, I want to have a more private life. I want to be elevated to royalty. Royalty is not out there on, for public viewing, for public display. Sarai means I don't want to be Yiska. I don't want to be viewed for my external beauty. I don't want to be viewed from the way others see me. I want my identity to be defined by me being a Sar, by me being a minister, or a mistress over my own house, over my own kingdom, over my own palace, over my own family, over myself. This is the identity that Sarai creates for herself. So naturally, by birth, she was beautiful. Naturally, by birth, she was gifted. She was prophetic. But the identity she creates for herself is to be Sarai, to be a minister over me, to be a mistress over myself, to be in control over myself. Okay? Now you might think, so far clear? Any questions? So I have a question here online. Avram to open 10 policy. So Randy's saying Avram had to open 10 policy and Sarah let everyone into the tent, a higher level, and that's what we're going to talk about now. So you might think that as she becomes a more private person and tries to hide her natural beauty, she becomes less influential. She becomes less of a power or a force, of her own. And in fact, usually when you think about the story of Avram and Sarah, who's always the one that's out there, that's famous, that's well known? Abraham. He's the guy. He's debating kings. He's a very public, charismatic figure. He's obviously a very talented speaker. And he knows how to convince people. He knows how to speak. He knows how to change minds. Avram is very talented, no question about it. He changed the whole world. He was a genius that we discussed when we talked about Abraham. He was able to discover God on his own, a brilliant man who was able to connect to people in a very powerful way. Very talented. And yet, what do we find about Sarah? So let's go read in the text number 3 now. Okay, so text number 3 tells us This is a text, one second, we're opening it up. Here we go, from chapter 12, verse number 5. This is from the very beginning of the parsha of Lech Lecha. So God says to Avram to go travel from your land, right? Go to the place I will show you. What happens in verse number 5? And Avram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all the possessions that they had acquired, and the souls they had acquired in Haran, and they went to go to the land of Canaan, and they came to the land of Canaan. That's the verse. We're going to focus on the words that say that they took with them all their possessions and the souls that they had acquired in Haran. What does that mean, the souls they had acquired in Haran? Says Rashi, what do you mean the souls? You don't make souls. In Hebrew, asu means they made. When the souls they made in Haran, you make pottery, you don't make souls. Says Rashi, what does it mean the souls they had acquired? Says Rashi, who are the souls they had made? Those whom he had brought under the wings of the Shekhinah. Avraham would convert the men, and Sarah would convert the women. And Scripture ascribes to them a merit as if they had made them, hence the expression that they made. That they made, Asher Asa means that they made them. Since Avraham converted the men, and Sarah, independent of Avraham, converted the women. It's also because they had their own mikvahs. He had Avraham the mikvah for the men, Sarah the mikvah for the women. Because she on her own was able to convert the women, therefore these people are considered the souls that she made. The souls that she made. So we see over here that Sarah is quite influential in her own stead, in her own merit. Sarah is making converts. And this is a very famous expression. Avram was making converts. And guess what? Sarah wasn't playing second fiddle. She wasn't just sitting in the kitchen cooking. She was making converts as well. She's also changing the world. So then that would seem to, and we have many, many examples of the hospitality of Sarah. Many examples. First of all, we know that Sarah's tent had an open door policy, someone already said, with open doors on all four sides, everyone could come in. And she fed them, and she took care of them, and she hosted them. You think Avram hosted them on his own? Right? Sarah was hosting them too. Not only that, we know several miracles that happened in the tent of Sarah.
Didn't it always smell like bread or something?
Yeah, it didn't smell like bread. There was fresh. One of the miracles was that the bread she made every Friday for Shabbat stayed fresh until the next week's Shabbat.
Just like in the temple.
Just like in the temple. She would light the candles Friday night. She would light Shabbat candle, and the candles remained lit the whole week to the next Friday. And there was a cloud of the Shekhinah hovering over her tent. Constantly, permanently, there was a cloud over her tent. Not like a rain cloud, but a cloud of divine presence. So she had a tent with a light that was always lit, with fresh challah always on the table, with the cloud of the Shekhinah, the presence of the Shekhinah hovering over her tent. Sounds amazing. And yet, even though she was so influential, even though she changed so many lives, we see something fascinating about Sarah, which is not that she studied. Sarah does not go out in public. She doesn't go out in public. That's the very next text. When the angels come to visit Avraham, what happens when the angels come to visit Avraham and Sarah to tell them that they're going to give birth to a child? So the angels say to Avraham, text number 4, this is from chapter 18, verse 9, they say to Avraham, where is Sarah your wife? And he says, behold, she's in the tent. What does it mean she's in the tent? It says Rashi, she's in the tent. She is modest. She is snua. She is modest. She's not out there. She wasn't entertaining publicly. She was in the tent. So how is Sarah making converts? How is she inspiring people if she's in the tent? So 2 of you have said, people are coming to her. First, I hope the question is clear. How is Sarah inspiring people? Sarah, she was a Sarai. Oops. Sarah was a Sarai. She was a minister over herself. And because she was a minister over herself, she had such a tremendous influence, such a tremendous power and pull to her, that without leaving her tent, she was able to be extremely influential on so many people. The story of the Chafetz Chaim, one of the famous rabbis of the last century, Yisrael Kagan from the city in Radin in Poland, famously known by the book he wrote called the Chafetz Chaim. Very famous rabbi. Very humble man who never, ever wanted publicity. He never wanted to be known. He never wanted to be famous. He shunned it. It was like a burden for him to be considered famous. So he was once asked, what did you do to become such an influential, famous rabbi that the whole world knows of the Chafetz Chaim? In all communities, he's respected by all communities, whether it's Hasidic, not Hasidic, Black Cat, everyone respects the Chafetz Chaim. What was the secret? Why you became so influential? So Chafetz Chaim shared something beautiful. So when I was young, I thought I'm going to change the world. But then I realized I can't change the whole world. The world's too big for me to change. So instead, I'm just going to change my country. I'll change Poland. Then I realized even Poland's a pretty big place. A lot of people living in Poland. I can't change the whole Poland. I'll change the city of Radin where I live. Even in Radin, there's other communities, there's other rabbis, it's still too hard. I'll change my neighborhood, my shul where I daven. Then even that was too hard for me to do. So I said, I'll change my block, my neighbors. Even that I couldn't do. At least my family, they got to listen to me. I'll change my family. And even they wouldn't listen to me. So finally I decided I'm going to change the only person that I can change. I'm going to change myself. And once I changed myself, then I began to change my family and my neighbors and my community and my city and the country until the whole.
That's the key to changing anybody. Is to change
Exactly. So Sarah is one of the most influential women of our history. In fact, Sarah is considered the mother of all converts. Sarah is considered the mother of all converts. When a convert prays, and they say the Amidah, they say, "Blessed are you, Lord of our fathers, God of Abraham, the God of my fathers." Avram and Sarah are not their parents. And yet, Avram and Sarah are considered like the parents of all. Avram is considered the father of all the converts, and Sarah is the mother. Why? Because they were, Sarah as well, is unbelievably influential in the world. One of the most influential women of our entire history. And yet she did it without running around outside, publicly, speaking and flaunting her beauty and trying to get attention. She did it sitting in her tent. She did it as a isha tznu, as a modest woman, sitting inside her tent with this unbelievable ability to change herself, to find the truth in the world, to give up everything she had grown up with, to become loyal to God. And because she had given up everything that she had grown up with, she left this big cosmopolitan city of Ur-Kasdim, which is a very, very wealthy city. And she went out to the desert, and she went to a land that you'll show me, and she was poor with Avram, etc., etc., etc. And she was real. She literally changed herself. From that, she had the power, not just the power, but she had the ability to change the lives of so many people. Now, this is a very, very powerful message for us. Because some of us could sit the last few weeks, and we learned about Noah, and we learned about Abraham, and we can say, I'm not Abraham. Avram was charismatic, and Avram was outspoken, and Avram was brave and courageous, and Avram was not afraid to stand up to the whole world and change the world and to tell the world you're wrong. I don't have that kind of inner strength to stand up in front of the world and say you're wrong and let me teach you the truth of God. I'm low-key, I'm quiet, I like to stay home in my own little tent. I don't have the ability to be out there and loud and public and change the world. So if you think that that's your situation, guess what? Sarah was also the same way, or Sarai at this point. Sarai didn't go out there. The Torah doesn't tell us anything that Sarai did publicly. Even when she's taken, it's always Avram speaking. Sarai is sitting in her tent. The angels ask Avram to bring out her praise, the Talmud tells us, To bring out the praise of Sarah, she's sitting in her tent. But sitting in her tent, she has the ability to not only be powerful and to change herself, to inspire and to change the lives of so many people.
So Rabbi, why you don't give those names to so many kids that born?
Which
Sarah and
names?
Abraham.
We get,
Sarah and Abraham too.
I know many people called Sarah and Avraham.
Not lately.
Of course, I have a cousin called Sarah and I have a cousin called Avraham.
Me too.
Okay, so what do you mean? And they're both younger than me. I'm saying
You're here, you know what I'm saying? So it's good.
it's not.
You said
Yeah.
that they're the parents of all converts.
Yeah.
But aren't they the parents of all of us, or are we considered converts?
No, of course the parents of us, but even a convert that's not from the natural biological descendants of Abraham, they're also considered parents. Okay.
If converted, don't they use their Jewish name as either Abraham or Sarah?
Say it again. I didn't hear what you said.
If someone
right,
gets
that's
converted, they're given.
Excellent point. So they'll make an excellent point. So when a person converts, they're actually called the Chaim, whatever, Ben Avraham, or Ben, if you're praying from the Torah, Ben Sara. Thank you. Very, very good point. It wasn't in here, but yes, that's how we pray or call up a person to the Torah, etc. So and so the convert, the son of Abraham and Sarah. Very good. Thank you, Siddha. Okay. Okay. So now we know who Yiska is, and now we know who Sarai is. Yiska is this natural, inherent talent and beauty and vision. And Sarah said, I don't want that. I want to be in my tent. I want to be a master over myself. And Sarai becomes a princess of inner beauty. That's the name Sarai, a princess over herself, a princess of inner beauty who didn't leave her tent and yet made thousands of converts. She was a private person who inspired so many people. Yes? Major lesson for us. But this is not the full extent of the greatness of our matriarch Sarah. At the age of 90, God comes to Avram and he changes the name of Avram and he says, I'm going to change your wife's name as well. Now, when God changes the name of this woman from Sarai to Sarah, it's not just a name change. There's a fundamental shift in the identity and in the existence of who is this lady that now is no longer Sarai, she's Sarah. And in fact, Torah says she cannot be called Sarai. That identity is in the past. Now she becomes a new person. So let us read exactly what it is that God says when he changes her name, shall we? So the final text we're going to read today from chapter 17, verse 15. And God said to Abraham, your wife Sarai, you shall not call her name Sarai. That's it. That name is over. For Sarah is her name. And again, her name means this is her new entity, her new identity, her new persona is not to be a Sarai, but to be a Sarah. Now, what is the difference between Sarai and Sarah? So again, we're so blessed to have Rashi to help us out. Rashi tells us, don't call her name Sarai. Sarai means my princess for me, but not for others. If you speak a little Hebrew, what does a yud at the end of the word mean? For me. That's what the yud is. It's a possessive. Rather, when you call her but Sarah, in an unqualified sense, in an open ending with a hey at the end, shall be her name, that she will be a princess over all. Understand? Sarai is a mistress over me, a princess of inner beauty. Sarah means she will be a princess over all. She'll be Shehei Sarah. I'll call, as the verse says, as Rashi says in Hebrew, she'll be a mistress over everyone. Okay. So what does that mean? What does this mean? What's God saying over here? What? Mother of the whole world. The whole world now is under the influence of Sarah. Meaning before now, Sarah was what?
Before she was on her own, and now God is influencing her a lot. So
God made a covenant with her now.
Yeah.
But what's the covenant he's making with her? There we go, it's back. What's the covenant God's making with her? The covenant is God changing her name. God's making a bris. It's a bris with Avram to be Avraham. We discussed that name change. God is saying to her, no longer will you just be a princess of inner beauty over your inner circle, over those who come into your tent, over those who come to you and that you inspire. You will now be an influence over the whole world. Meaning, first, she was an influencer to those who were close to her. Most notably to her great illustrious husband, Avram. Even Avram needed her to guide her in the right path and to tell him sometimes what he needed to do that he didn't know on his own, that he needed her to tell him what to do. But now, at the age of 90, God says, you've mastered being a Sarai. I am going to give you the ability to be a Sarah, to be a mistress, a princess over the whole world. Meaning, not just that your natural self has been refined, that you're a princess over yourself. Now I'm going to do miracles for you. The whole world will know your greatness. And in fact, after Sarah has this baby at the age of 90 years old, the whole world knows how great Sarah is. She calls her son Yitzchak. Why? Because Kol Hashemeya Yitzchakli. Whoever will hear will rejoice for me. The whole world will hear about the miracles of Yitzchak. You know what the Medrash tells us? People didn't believe that Sarah could have a child. 90 years old. So they said that they just, they adopted a child off the street and pretended that it's their child. It's not really biologically their child. They're pretending. So they made a big feast. After Yitzchak was weaned, they made a big feast. And God did a miracle that day, and all of the women in town, their breasts dried up. They couldn't nurse. And they all came to the party with hungry children. And Sarah breastfed every single baby at that party.
Oh, wow.
How's that for a cool measure? It's a little tough, you know what I'm saying? It's hard enough for one baby, but whatever. She had enough milk in her breast to feed all the babies. And then that put to bed any rumors that she was not the mother of this child. When she was able to give milk to all these children, okay, we can see. So the whole world knew about the miracles that were happening to her. She is now totally transcending. She's not just a princess over herself, that she's refined her own character, that now she's no longer she's a minister, a princess over herself. God has taken her above and beyond the world, a ruler of the world.
So after her name change, does she come out of her tent and participate more?
You're going to see the exact opposite. So what happens after today? Let's see. You're going to see seemingly the opposite. The question, I'll repeat for those on Facebook, Sadel's question was, now she become more public, now that she becomes Sarah, does she become more public figure, more out there and open to the world? You know what the next story we find with Sarah is? After her name is changed to Sarah. Well, of course, Yitzchak is born, the baby has a bris. And what's the next story after that we see in the Torah? I already quoted it from this story earlier today. When she tells Avraham to chase away Hagar and Yishmael. How does that fit with the idea that she's now the princess over the world? Seemingly, it's the exact opposite. Hashem is making her Sarah to be a princess over everybody, to be an influence not just on her inner circle, on those who are close to her, but to be a Sar, to be a princess over everyone. So what are we going to do? This woman Hagar, this nation, this Yishmael, out of my house. That's Sarah. That's a princess over everybody.
But she's protecting the next generation of the Jewish people.
Anyone did that today, they'd be around for feeding all. Someone's worried if someone feed all the babies, they would get arrested. Okay. A lot of things that happened in the Bible, people did today, they would get arrested. A lot of things. So Sadal is answering correctly. Why did she kick away Yishmael? Not because she did something Yishmael. She was protecting her child Yitzchak. And here we come to the ultimate greatness and the greatest greatness of Sarah. Do you know what was the greatest greatness of Sarah? That she was a Yiddish man. She was a Jewish mother. What does it mean to be a Jewish mother? The ultimate, a Jewish mother is not just that you worry about what your kids are going to eat if they have a sweater to wear outside in the rain or not. That's not what a Jewish mother is. A Jewish mother, they say the joke, different between an Italian mother and a Jewish mother. Both they come home, the kids don't want to eat the dinner they made. When an Italian mother makes dinner, the kids want to eat, what does she do? She screams at the kid. And when the Jewish mother, her kids don't want to eat the dinner she made, she screams at herself. But that's not the full definition of a Jewish mother. The full definition of a Jewish mother is that she worries for the spiritual well-being of her child above and over everything else. Over everything else. Meaning, when Sarah truly becomes a Sarah, a princess of the world? When she has a child called Yitzchak. That's when she truly becomes a princess of the world. Now, how do you get a child like Yitzchak? How do you raise a child to be as holy, as pure, as righteous as Yitzchak was? To have the kind of persona, we're going to get to Yitzchak, God willing, next week or 2 weeks, we'll talk about Yitzchak, to be the kind of holy, righteous, disciplined person that Yitzchak was? When everything else is secondary to his spiritual well-being. When you're protective and all you care about is to protect your child's well-being, that is the story of Yitzchak. That's the story. That's the story of the Yiddish mama of Sarah. Meaning as follows. Let me explain to you like this. People think there's a conflict. There's a conflict between focusing on my child and being an influence on the world. It's either or. So either I'm going to be out there and have a career, and I'm going to be successful, and I'm going to be, let's say, in the world of Chabad, I'll be a Rebbe, and I'll inspire the world, etc. Or I have to give it up and have to stay at home and take care of my children. What is the true greatness of Sarah? We find the true greatness of Sarah? In the Torah, we discover the true greatness of Sarah after she passes away. This week's Torah reading, this week's parsha is called Chaye Sarah, the life of Sarah. And what's the very, very beginning, the opening verses of this week's parsha? That Sarah died. And she was buried. And yet the whole parsha is called the life of Sarah. Why is the parsha that starts with her death called the life of Sarah? Why would you call the story that begins when someone dies their life? That's a euphemistic term. That's the Torah. We don't say negative words, so we call it in a euphemistic way. The question was, why do we call a cemetery a house of the living? It's euphemistic. It's an expression. The Torah is telling us the greatness of Sarah is not what she did when she was alive. It's about the impact that she had. The impact that she had. The children she left behind. What was her legacy? What did she create in the world that remained? We tend to judge value and success in the world by what we're doing. Sarah's greatness was that she wasn't about what's happening now. She didn't gauge her own success by what she was doing at the moment. She was able to see the big picture. She was able to see the future. She was able to see the future. And because of that, she created something that lasted forever. She created the Jewish people. So Sarah's greatness is not in her beauty, not in her prophecy, not even in her self-control and her being a princess of herself. Her greatness is that she was able to build the future of the Jewish people. That's greatness. That's how you become a Sarah over the whole world. That's how you become a Sarah, a princess over the whole world. Okay. You want to hear an amazing story? Still my notes here. So there was a Rebbe called the Blazhever Rebbe. The Blazhever Rebbe was a Rebbe in the times of the Holocaust, who was taken to Bergen-Belsen, and his wife and his kids, they were all killed during the Holocaust. He was the only survivor of his entire family. While he was in the camps, there's an amazing story with him in the camps. He decided he wanted to have his last year, 1944. And things were already getting a little bit like looser in the camps. There were certain like changes happening. And he decided he wanted to have matzah for Pesach. And there was one particular guard or officer, rather, general, I don't know exactly who, an officer in the camp that he had become close to. The Blazhever Rebbe wasn't just a regular, ordinary person. It was a very, very dignified person. And somehow he shined out above the other prisoners. And somehow he had developed a relationship of some sort with one of the more, I'm trying to find the right word for a German officer in the concentration camp, but it wasn't as barbaric and as sadistic and evil as the others, who retained some spark of humanity within him, and they will appreciate what was going on. And so the Rebbe felt that if he asks him to help him get matzah, to get an oven to have matzah for Pesach, that he would help him. He had to say it in his head. Last week they had to have matzah on Pesach. He wanted to have matzah for Pesach. So back and forth, and he said, you know what? I have to do what God wants me to do. So he finds the courage in his heart, and he goes to ask this officer to give him the ability to give him an oven or whatever he wanted, small little oven, to be able to make matzah for Pesach. He goes to this officer, and to surprise the officer, okay, give me a list of the people that want matzah for Pesach, and I'll see what can be done. I'll send it to let's see what we can do. So the Blazhever Rebbe comes back to the barracks, and he says, whoever wants to get matzah for Pesach, give me your name. I'm going to get permission to get an oven. We're going to get matzah. Now, most of the people thought that he was Meshuggah, crazy. Are you nuts? You're going to give the Nazi guard your name asking for matzah for Pesach? That's like basically giving them your name, saying, please kill me. Like that's what it is. Like, here, kill me first. Don't let me live to liberation, just kill me now. And one like, you're crazy. He's tricking you, he's playing with you. He pretended to be nice to you. He wasn't being nice to you. He's like playing you along. The Blazhever Rebbe insisted. And whatever, he got names of 5 people that agreed to put 4 other people, him, and they agreed to put their names, ask for matzah. Now, a few months later, guard called one day by roll call. These 5 people are called aside. And I heard 2 different versions of the story at this point, exactly what happened if they got the matzah from the guard, he gave them matzah, or he gave them an oven, and they started to make a matzah, and then when they were making it, another officer saw what happened. He came and he stomped on the oven and broke the oven. I saw it printed with one way, and my brother reminded me that I both heard the story a different way. Either way, they got one matzah. They got matzah. I don't know if it was one matzah before the oven was broken, or they got 5 matzah for these people. He comes back to the barracks. Now they have matzah for Pesach. Now they only have a few, and there's a whole barracks full of Jews that want to celebrate Pesach. And there's a whole discussion amongst the people, who should get the matzah, how to divide it. Should these people of Israelites get the matzah? Should the Rebbe get 3 matzah? Should they give a little piece to every single person, divide it, even though no one will get enough to fulfill the mitzvah of eating matzah, but everyone can get one little piece? Whole discussion. And all of a sudden, this woman comes forth. Her name was Branya. And she says she had with her 4 children that survived the war. She's still in the camp in Bergen-Belsen. And she comes and she says that my children need to have the matzah. And people look and say, you're crazy? Your children? They're not even obligated in the mitzvah of matzah. They're kids. They're not chayiv. They're not obligated in the mitzvah. Why would we waste the little matzah we have, the one matzah we have? Why should we waste that one matzah on your children not even obligated in the mitzvah? And this woman stands up strong from the Blazhever Rebbe, and it says in the verse in Exodus that when we leave Egypt, B'nareinu v'skanenu, we're going to go out with our children. B'bneinu u'b'bneiseinu, with our sons and with our daughters, we're going to leave out of Egypt. These, we may not survive the camps. We may not survive to the end of the war. But these children are going to survive the camp. And they're going to survive the Holocaust. They're called the Holocaust. They're going to survive the war. And they're going to grow up to be the next Jewish generation. It's more important that they should know what matzah tastes like. And that a Jew eats matzah on Pesach no matter what, than anybody else here. And the Blazher Rebbe agreed and he gave these kids matzah. And after the war, the Blazher Rebbe found that his wife and all of his kids had been killed. This woman, her name was Branya. Her husband had been killed. And the Blazher Rebbe married this woman, Branya. And he said, how did I want to marry her? When I saw her in the concentration camps. When most people couldn't think past the next minute. The only thought that they had on their mind was, how will I survive till tomorrow? How will I have enough food to eat today just to live? How will I have enough food just to make it to the day without just dying of hunger right here, right now? And this woman was able to have the foresight, to be able to have this deep, deep conviction that even if we all die, our children will live on as Jews. And they have to know for the future what matzah tastes like on Pesach. This is the kind of person that's the future of Yiddishkeit. This is the definition of Sara. This is the definition of a Yiddish mama. And so they ended up getting married. They never had more children together. He adopted these 4 children of Branya. He adopted. The Blazher Rebbe lived till 99. She lived till 94. He passed away. She passed away in 2004. She passed away. This lady Branya, the age of 94 years old. Yeah, understand? This is what it means to be a real Sara. To be the ultimate Yiddish mama means that the whole world is secondary, including everything, to my main purpose in life, which is not what I'm going to do right now. Not about my career, not about how much money I have, not about who I influence, not about what I said, but on the future and on the impact that I'm having for tomorrow. That's the most important thing. I went to say this earlier, but I didn't. The Rebbe, there's a story, there was a shluch, I don't remember who, a Chabad Rebbe, and it came to the Rebbe. She was struggling between doing her Rebbetzin duties and being a mother to her children. It was a constant struggle, and she felt she couldn't do both. And the Rebbe told us, a very often quoted line in Chabad, that raising your children is not a contradiction to your shlichus, to your mission. It's the ikar shlichus, which means it's the most important part of your mission. Not that there's 2 missions to choose this or over this, and that they're conflict one to the other. The ultimate greatness, to be a Sara, to be able to truly influence the world, to be a princess over the whole world, is not when you try and be part of the world, and not when you worry about what the world thinks, and how I look to the world, and how the world sees me, and how I see the world, and how being, separating myself, and worrying about myself, and growing myself. The way to be a Sara, the way to be the ultimate influencer, greater than Avraham, is not by giving speeches, and not by being influential, and not by being a big speaker. The greatest influencer in the world was Sara. She never left her tent. She never gave a speech. You know, she was the greatest influence in the world. The one that God himself makes a covenant with her and says, you will be the Sara. You will be the princess over everyone. It was because she stayed home and took everything on the side to focus on the most important thing in the world, making sure that Yitzchak would grow up to be a good Jewish boy. And that's the most important lesson for us. Okay?